Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. I'm your host, Lore Dude. How are things? Oops, I forgot to turn it. We actually don't have that much news to discuss. Which I suppose is a good thing when you think about it. It's a good thing. The Empire shall rise. Happy Sunday. Welcome to an hour earlier, I guess. Well, back, yeah. For those of you who are in Europe right now. I hope you enjoyed that daylight savings time. It may hopefully be your last, because apparently the EU Commission is currently looking into going ahead and eradicating daylight savings time. Finally, it only took about 40 years to get there. Now, that still has to be ratified by the 28 countries and blah, 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 blah. But at least they're looking into getting rid of daylight savings time. There hasn't even been a peep about that over here. So next week, we get to be an hour earlier, too. Yay. I'm so looking forward to that. Don't worry, we'll be resynced then when that happens. And that's what really matters, right? That we're all the same. Before we go any further, I'm actually going to just say really quick that my heart goes out to any Leicester fans out there. I don't even know what to add to that, to be completely blunt. I really don't. My friend has a saying that death sucks. The end. And I agree with it. Anyways. So, we actually don't have that much news to talk about this week. In fact, we have basically no news to talk about this week. Which I suppose is a good thing. I mean, we could talk about Fallout 76, which apparently has no content. I know what you're thinking. What? No, of course it does. No, not really. In the same way that I would say that Blops 4 doesn't really have any content. It's a game, there's stuff you can do, but it doesn't have any actual content to it. Near as I can tell, the only content in Fallout 76 is running around doing the datapad mission. So, I stand by my earlier statement. Fallout 76 is just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. That I really do. I think that's what they're doing. And Bethesda can afford that, so whatever. I mean, I was just talking about how gaming companies should branch out more and try new things more, so whatever. What else? Dragon Quest XI sold very well. In fact, it is the best-selling Dragon Quest game in the States, which is great. It's actually kind of frustrating because the thing we here in the States have been hearing over and over and over and over and over about the Dragon Quest series is, well, you know, if the sales figures support it, we'll consider putting more of our games out in the States. And they are just constantly talking about that. They've been saying that for, like, 10 years now. Like, well, we'll think about porting this if it sells well. Well, we'll think about porting this if it sells well. You just over and over and over. They even said that before 11 came out. Well, you know, if you want more stuff like 11 to come out, you better sell well. Well, 11 sold well. And, by the way, so did 9 and 8 and 4, 5, and 6. So, goddammit, give us our damn games. Anyways. Yeah, it was, Anthony. Although that was also being pushed by a smaller group. In fact, I could probably point to a singular individual who did that. Let's see, who's here this morning? Juanta, Lucas, Cordoon, Leander, Tricksters, Theratos, Magister of the Horde. Thank you, Robot, also known as Ty Robot. Hazardous, Bragwin, Anthony, and Dante. What's up, guys? Red Dead is not bad. It's got flaws, but it's got good parts. I'd say it's about average right now. What else? Let's see. Anybody who cares about Fractured Space, the game is going into maintenance mode after the next update, which I thought was interesting. What else? So, Calypso. For those of you not aware, Star Trek is currently doing a series of little video shorts, basically centered around several of the characters before the next season of Star Trek Discovery comes out. And they've been alright, I guess. I don't know. But the one that's interesting is one that's coming up is Calypso, which is going to be set in an extraordinarily far amount of time in the future. so far in the future, in fact, that it will actually be the most in the future we've ever gone in Star Trek. Seriously. So, that's interesting. It'll be curious to see what they're doing with that. And why a recreation of Discovery is wandering around in the year bajillion. We'll see. It's not out yet. I'm not even sure when Calypso's coming out. But that's something weird. What else? I guess this isn't really newsworthy, so we're going to leave this in the early discussion stuff. The Library of Congress recently added an 85-page amendment of exemptions to the current copyright law and protection law here in the States. I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing. It's actually this ludicrously long thing. The long and the short of it was that this was being done so that museums and archivists could archive digital works, aka video games. So, for example, if someone wanted to archive, you know, legally archive a NES game or an old MMO or whatever, they could do that legally now. That's actually been added to the exemptions. Now, it's still not perfect because they have to. What is incumbent upon them legally in order to do this is that they have to procure a legal copy of both the client side and the server side software in order to actually archive it properly and make it so that they can maintain it. So, for example, if they wanted to get a copy of Ultima Online right now, they would have to reach out to whoever actually owns the rights to that, which is a matter of debate. And they would have to actually say, all right, we would like you to give us to this. And they could just say no. And if they say no, then, oh well, there's nothing much they can do about that. And there's other things they could do, though. Like, they can now legally circumvent DRM protection in order to archive games, so that's nice. So this is it's a step in the right direction. It's just only a single step in the right direction. So we're getting there. We're getting there. What else? What else have I got in my news? Basically nothing. Like I said, it's a very news light week. I suppose. Okay, so first of all, Lore Runner news, Lore Walker news, whatever you want to call that. I'm still working on the theater stuff, to be completely honest with you. I've been smashing out YouTube stuff with all my side time. And right now I'm kind of at a point where I can't do any work on the theater because I'm waiting for lines to be submitted. So if you're working on the Lore Walker Theater project, please get me some lines so I could get some stuff put in there. This is your little poke to remind you that we're still working on that. I've been throwing together some random pictures because I was having trouble sleeping throughout the course of the week as a consequence of being sick. I've already shown you one of them. It's the Mario one I showed off the other day. Well, I made another one. This was inspired by one of my viewers. Completely an accident, actually. Savicom. She was like, hey, you should play FF4 again. And somehow in my addled, barely awake mind, I interpreted that as, I should totally do more like the FF9 title cards, except for everything. You remember the FF9 title cards, right? Like, Vivi shows up and he's like, you know, how do you prove we exist? Maybe we don't exist. That whole thing, right? So, in the spirit of that, I made this. Whoops, too big. Fit. There we go. I made this. And I'm actually really happy with how it turned out. I spent a decent amount of time on it. The entire idea is that there's a single word that is supposed to summarize the character, and then a quote, which helps to add characterization to the character. And, you know, them plus location that's significant to them. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I like it. And if you guys like it enough, I kind of want to do this for other FFs. In fact, I've already kind of worked out some rough sketches for one from 3 and 4 and 5. I'm not sure I'd go past 5, as I know that sounds strange, but for example, doing one about 7 is going to run into issues of standardization, because every character in FF7 does not have the same visual presentation. Like, not every character was an Advent Children, for example, so I can't just use the Advent Children CGI. And if I use the original Nomura art, which I could, then we're going to have issues of the fact that it's going to be artwork the whole time. So I'm going to have to think about that, is what I'm getting down to. It's easier when I have something to work with, like the CGI of FF9 or the sprites of FF3, 4, 5, and 6. Also, nobody commented on this one. Probably my favorite one of these that I did is Go-Go. He was actually the very first one I did because I told myself, unless I can come up with a good quote for Go-Go, I'm not doing the rest of this project. And I'm really pleased with it. In case you missed that or it's too small to see, his quote, his title is Devolved. And his quote is, "Are we not drawn onward to new era?" Everyone's like, what the hell does that mean? Hang on just a second. What in the world? There we go. Okay. Devove, it refers to being devoted or dedicated towards a particular thing, which, you know, I felt was appropriate for the mime. And the quote itself, because obviously nobody actually got it. The quote itself is a palindrome. Are we not drawn onward to new era? That was... I really wanted to do a palindrome for Go-Go, and I really spent a lot of time trying to come up with a good one, and I found that one. I was like, oh, that's perfect! Yes and yes, respectively, Adam, to your question. Could I do these for another game series? Probably not. I mean, it would have to be a game series I know well enough to be able to say this is what this character is in a quote and in a word. You know. Actually, I'm totally lying, by the way. Go-Go's not my favorite. My favorite's Kefka. Did you notice that he uses a different font for his title, a different font for his quote, a different color scheme for his quote? He's not outlined like the others. He's not in the same grid as the others. Everything I did everything with Kefka's to make him look completely out of sync with everyone else. Even Gestalt is actually still in sync with everyone else and still on the same grid. But Kefka is completely out of sync with everything. I don't feel like I need to explain it anymore. Anywho, just wanted to show that off a bit. Boo. So, what else? There was something else. Oh, right, of course, the floodgates. So, for those of you who know where the floodgates are closing in about 3 days, 4 days. Basically, Wednesday is going to be your last day to go ahead and vote for floodgates. If you have not voted, this is basically your final call. As of right now, the requested ones that would come in, assuming no one else votes, are locked in. Everything 3 and up is going to come in. Assuming no one else votes. So this is your call. Make it happen. Give me just a second. I've also been thinking about doing my own little Game of the Year thing, like I always do. So I suppose, of course, I'm going to do that. And that Game of the Year thing, I've been thinking of categories. But I'll talk about that in a second, because I just pulled it up. So these are the things that are going to be in, assuming no one else votes over the next couple of days. In order: Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Iron Man 3, Thor 2, Captain America 2, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man, Age of Ultron, cleaning my glasses, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, Cloud Atlas, which is apparently a movie, Ghost in the Shell, cartoon, Tales of Berseria, make me pick something, Alpha Protocol, and... looks like Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 1. That's not up to me, Adam. That's up to you guys. So, those are the ones that are in. There's also the bonus ones that the very high supportive patrons have picked, which include Quantum Break, which I have no idea what that is, The World Ends With You, specifically the DS version, Star Wars Rebellion, which third always gives me some weird ones, Legacy of Kain Defiance, Serenity, the film, KOTOR 2, again, and God of War 4. So all of those are the ones that are definitely, or at the moment are definitely in. That can still change. All of these ones in the 2 range could be pushed up, at which point we'd have to start flipping coins. So, and then I will have to pick 12 other ones. So that will happen. I have no idea which ones I'm going to pick other than 2. I already have 2 kind of mentally thought out of, but that's it. It's a guaranteed pick, Dakota. I don't get to say no to those ones. So. Oh, 12. Here's Firefly episode 1. Here's Firefly episode 2. So this episode sucks. And this episode sucks. No, I'm kidding. What else? So that's Floodgates. Just to give you guys an idea of what's going on in the schedule, anybody who pays attention, and I hope at least some of you have been checking that website. I go out of my way to update that thing every night. But the website, you'll notice there's nothing scheduled after the Red Dead Redemption 2 premiere run, which we're currently going through. The reason for that is because there is nothing scheduled after that. Once I finish with Red Dead Redemption 2, even though I have approximately 700 trillion things to stream, including lore runs and premiere runs, I need to start focusing on YouTube work again. So I'm going to go ahead and spend, basically, once I finish, I'm just going to start cranking out. I'm going to, what do you call it? I'm going to crunch, there we go. I'm going to crunch out as many YouTube videos as I possibly can to try and get caught back up on the YouTube side of things. Once that's done, once I have reached a point where I personally feel that I have a decent enough backlog for YouTube, then we'll switch right back to streaming. I will make sure to announce on Twitter and on Loreweek when we get back to streaming. Loreweek streams will happen as usual, duh, but there will probably be at least a few weeks where the only streams you see me from for that period of time are just going to be the Loreweek streams. How far back are I? What do you mean, Anthony? Lore Crunch! On sale now! Yeah, no. Let's see. So, I mentioned the categories for you know, best stuff or whatever. So here's the categories I've came up with so far. Best Game of the Year, obviously. Best Gameplay of the Year. Best Story Game of the Year. And then I've got a couple other categories just off the top of my head. Best Game I Wouldn't Have Tried If Not for the Show. Biggest Disappointment of the Year. Biggest Pleasant Surprise of the Year. Most Emotionally Connecting Game of the Year. Best New Lorewalker Meme of the Year. Best Platforming Game. Most Anticipated Continuation Game. Most fun to just play, and best ground level storytelling game. Those are the categories I've got so far. Yes, the count. So if anybody has any suggestions for additional categories that they feel is worthwhile to vote on, you're more than welcome to suggest them. Just toss me a message whenever. I've already got my own list of which games I would put in which categories. And we're probably going to do a vote thing as well, like we like to. Best aesthetic. Okay. Jot that down really quick. Best. I hate typing on this thing. This is why I usually just talk it out rather than type it. Best art style. We'll put that. Best aesthetic art style. Put that though. Style. There we go. I still don't understand your question, Anthony. So I'm going to try and answer both sides of what I presume is your question. So right now, January's videos are uploaded and ready to go. That's not true. The first week of January is uploaded and ready to go. I still need to finish the rest of January. What I intend to do is get all the way up until June concluded before I get back to streaming. Best to meme. I haven't actually thought of Lore Stab as a meme. The memes I have jotted down are Herb Man. Boy. Don't worry, we have money. What was the other one here? And I am the President of the United States of America. Blandest Game of the Year? Sure, what do we got here? Come on, blandest. Although that kind of blurs with worst. Oh yeah, the Dark Times. Hang on. Where was the category for that? There we go. Dark Times. Oh yeah, eavesdropping. There we go. Rain and snow. Oh god. It's amazing they're adding rain and snow. I'm blown away by this. Rain and snow. Darkest Game of the Year? Yeah, no kidding, Ticoida. That appears to be the RDR2 meme so far. Witness! Crime witnessed. Anyways, feel free to mention several on Discord or whatever. if anybody has any other suggestions. Right, so I do have I have one bit of news I actually want to talk about here. Just one, before we get to the Q&A section. So let me jot this down over here, get a timestamp. My timestamps have been off lately. I don't need to figure out what's going on with that. So, timestamp. Not that long, Adam. I basically spent about 3 hours screwing around, testing, and playing stuff before I undid it all and loaded a save before the 3 hours, so... Not too long. Anyways, how many of you are aware of the fact that there's a new Star Trek show that's been announced? How many of you are aware of the fact that I'm talking about the animated one? So they're making a new animated Star Trek show. Now, for anybody who's actually been paying attention, I actually commented on how I believed animation was the correct direction to go in for a new Star Trek show. I had an entire Loreweek segment talking about that several weeks ago. Yeah. So, okay, there's a new animated TV show. All right, on the face of it, yes, all this stuff is my own remixes, Cordon. You can find them on the Cordon's page on the website. Hang on, I'll pull that up real quick. Because I just realized there's no link to it on the main page yet, because it's not really finished yet. There you go, Cordon. Anywho, because I'm still going with the Cordon's project. So, yeah, they're making an animated show. Okay. So, I'm with it. I really am, but the problem here is that it's a comedy show. I mean, it's not like Star Trek can't be funny. Star Trek has made me legitimately laugh many times. But Star Trek also can be extremely unfunny when it's trying to be funny. So, I'm not sure what I think of that. Hang on, it either gets worse or better depending on your opinion, because the showrunner, and main producer and writer is going to be... I don't have his name written down, of course I don't. It's the guy who worked on Rick and Morty. Now, I hate Rick and Morty. I'm just going to give my opinion on that really quickly there. I can't stand the show. I've tried to watch it several times. Several of my friends enjoy it. And I just despise it. I think it's gross. I think it's disinteresting. And I don't think it's funny. So, the idea of Mr. Rick and Morty, writer dude... hang on, I'll get you a name. The idea of him... being the main writer and producer for a Star Trek animated show, which is supposed to be comedy-focused. Mike McMahon. Mike McMahon, that's the guy. So, I don't know what to think of that. As I've already said, I do think that an animated show is the right thing to do for Star Trek. I mean that with total sincerity. But... comedy-focused, and with that guy, I don't know. This just sounds weird to me. It's also probably worth noting that this will mean that CBS will be pushing 3 concurrent Star Trek shows at a time, which would actually be a record. The most we've ever had is 2, TNG and DS9, and DS9 and Voyager. I'm really not sure what I think of that. Don't mistake me. I'm big on the idea of new Star Trek and actually having Star Trek shows again. This just doesn't feel like that, though. I know that sounds like such a strange thing. And again, we'll see. Maybe the Picard show will be good. Maybe the animated show will be good. Maybe Discovery Season 2 will be something I actually enjoy. I don't know. I can't see the future. But this feels a little bit too much to me. Like they're pushing way too much out. And usually, especially when it comes to television, if you try to push out too much, what it means is cancellations. I can literally prove this in the modern era by pointing to all the recent Marvel shows and the string of cancellations they went through, have already gone through as of this point in time. Because it's a quick and easy decision. If you've got 3 shows up and one of them's underperforming. Not bad, not performing truly badly, just not up to snuff. It's a quick and easy decision to get rid of it because you got 2 backups. Now, this is probably exactly why they're doing this, because from a purely financial perspective, having multiple shows up means you have more backup plans. But the catch is that they don't treat it like each show needs to be, at least from a purely financial perspective, that each show needs to be polished and have care put into it and really make it the best show possible, which leads to cancellations. I mean, Luke Cage, you know. Do I need to make my point here? It's also worth noting that this is not new, even in the modern era. As we all know, the reason Enterprise, even though it finally was getting good, even though the ratings had started going up, even though it was performing well, Enterprise did actually still get canceled after its 4th season because of this same mentality. Although that was in a different direction, but because they were trying to shotgun movies rather than shotgun shows. But the same mentality applies. It was like, well, cut it. But it's making money. Yeah, it's not cut it. Okay. You know, I hate many things that Rick Berman has done over the years, but at least the man wanted Enterprise to keep going, you know. Anyways. Oh yeah, I suppose, I'm sorry. So that's about all I've got here as far as the news for that little tidbit. For those of you not aware, Halloween is in a couple of days. That would be this coming Wednesday. So I've already announced this on the stream, but I know not everyone watches the premiere runs. So to make sure that everyone gets this knowledge and information, we will not be streaming Red Dead Redemption 2 on Halloween Day. Halloween Day will be the Halloween stream. On the off chance that you're new here, I want to explain what that means really quickly. So a Halloween stream, it kind of accidentally became a tradition. If I'm being honest, I don't even remember the exact reason why this became a tradition. But the long and the short of it is, during Halloween, all of my rules about no controversial topics on my show are temporarily removed. Think of it like The Purge, except not as stupid. And so you guys can talk about things like horribly controversial topics that normally wouldn't be expressed on Halloween. And it usually kind of devolves into a little bit of a Q&A, because people like to come after me with regards to those topics, which is totally cool. We are about 50-50 when it comes to the quality of these Halloween streams. Sometimes we actually put out Halloween streams that have actually been uploaded to YouTube because you guys have been awesome and, you know, civil and wonderful. And then sometimes you're not. And sometimes we don't upload those episodes. So we'll see. So in other words, some people have asked, you know, will you be uploading this Halloween stream to YouTube? The answer is, I don't know yet. It will depend on how the stream itself actually goes. You just now noticed this, Kate. You actually built this thing, and you're just not noticing it. Come on, man. So, as I was saying, no, I actually know... I've narrowed my list of which game we're going to play on Halloween down to 3 games. I usually don't like to play horror games on Halloween, not only because I don't like horror games, but because that's not really the approach of our Halloween. You know, our Halloween isn't about horror, it's about real life, which is a different type of horror. Like we played this political voting game one year, for example. What are the specific rule amendments? Do you still have to be civil and mature? Technically, no. But if you don't, we will still ban you. If you decide to really get into it and actually be what I would consider toxic, then you will still be banned, regardless of the day. You are still required to be a decent human being, regardless of topics. Play Postal 2. No! I've played Postal 2 before. Back when it was first coming out, because I didn't know what it was. Yeah. Friday the 13th. Who would want to play that? Alien Isolation. Again, no horror games. We're not doing horror games. It's got to be political games. Like I said, I've already got some ideas. Binding of Isaac. I would rather gouge out my eyes. I don't like Binding of Isaac, if I haven't mentioned that. Hatred? No. No, Postal 2 is not political. Postal 2 is juvenile. Several people have asked this, so I'm just going to go ahead and make this nice and obvious. Hang on a second. Yes, it will be acceptable to go ahead and talk about Star Wars The Last Jedi. If it becomes too bad, we will remove that addendum. I just want to make that clear. However, thanks to the rules of how I do this stuff, Star Wars The Last Jedi will be an acceptable topic on Halloween. So, anyways, so let's get to the Tumblr stuff. We've got people have been asking me tons of Tumblr questions, so we're going to just kind of bash these out here. So question... Yeah, I know. Question number 1. Which, in your opinion, which Final Fantasy has the best visual character design and why? And which Final Fantasy has the worst character design and why? Now, when it says design, it doesn't really mean artwork. It means, you know, the specific design of their outfits and their appearance and all that fun stuff. Now, unfortunately, for me personally, that means FF1 through 6 are disqualified as far as design, because they were all designed by Amano, and I can't stand his designs. So, moving on, past the 1 through 6 range. One of those would be the worst. I'd have to think about a specific. What? I don't like Amano. I never have. Not since I was a kid. When I was a kid, I thought I was looking at the wrong thing when I would look at Amano art. Like, I didn't realize I was looking at characters from the FFs I liked. Anyways, damn it, Bragwood. Sure, why not, Ty Robot? I mean, there is character design in FF11 and FF14. Like, think about, French kid, Alphino, right? So, for me, if I'm being completely honest, there are 3 FFs that come to mind when I think of I really enjoy the design of the characters. FF7, FF12, and FF15. And I know I'm going to get some flack for that, and I don't care. I like FF7 because ultimately it is relatively... Here, let's switch playlists. I like FF7 because it is relatively simple. I know that sounds like such a strange thing to point out, but it has the exact opposite problem of being over-designed. It is not over-designed, and I like that. I think that they do a good job of presenting, you know, here's a character who is wearing some clothing. Right? Same thing with 15. In 15, I just see people who are wearing clothing, and I'm like, okay. Now, Takoida is correct. Both 15 and 12 have some way over there. Like, I don't like how Vaughn looks, even when his abs aren't pasted on. But I do very much like how Ash looks. I like how Bosch looks. I like how Balthier looks. You know, I like how Vayne looks. For the most part, I enjoy the designs of 12. And I do enjoy, for the most part, the designs of 15. Except for Cindy. Or Sydney, or whatever the hell they say her name is. Where's my freaking FF playlist? Here it is. So, I don't feel the need to explain 7s, though. The thing is, though, of those 3, I think 7 would rise to the top for me, based purely on the fact that I can't think of any characters in 7 where I actively dislike, like to an extensive amount, dislike the design of their character. Like, obviously, I don't care for all of them, but for the most part, I'm with it. Cool. So, I think I'd have to go with 7 as my favorite. Least favorite? I actually know which one's my least favorite. I don't even have to really think about this one. Can anyone guess it? chat's over here, by the way. That's why I keep looking over here. Yeah, Vincent, I don't care for that much. Yuffie, I don't care for that much. But for that's about as far as that goes. 10? No. 10, I have, of course, ranted about, but it's still not as bad. 8? No. 8's actually not too bad for me. 2? 2 is correct. FF2 is correct. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I want you to do me a favor and look up a picture of... Oh, God, I can't even think of her name. The sister. I can't think of her damn name. Maria. Like, look up a picture of Maria sometime. You will never know looking at the sprite. I was reminded of this because Maria recently was added to the Dissidia. Whatever the Dissidia game is that I'm playing. I can't think of the name of it. And I was just like, oh my god! I forgot that's how she looks. Ah! Ah! And I mean, Maria's the worst. But they all look terrible. Like Furion... Again, just look at his Dissidia outfit for an example of how ridiculous Furion looks. Leon, Guy. The only character... Well, I guess that's not true. The only two characters who don't look just in FF2 for me are Joseph and Minwoo. That's about as much as my tolerance goes in that direction. Even Mateus just looks... Huh? What in the... Huh? I am the Emperor. Emperor David Bowie. So I guess that's my answer to that one. Oh my goodness. Anyways, so that's my answer there. Now, I actually had an answer for this question. I could picture that, Rex. I could picture... Why Furion? Of all the FF characters, why Furion? So this next question, let me get a timestamp. Hang on. Timestamp. Sorry, I'm doing a weird monitor layout right now because we're streaming a PlayStation game. Damn PlayStation games. So, this is actually a great question. I like this because this is related to a topic I'd like to talk about someday. Not today, we got plenty of questions to go through today, but I still want to talk about this topic someday. Well, that's up to Brago and SJ, or Rax. Both of them could do that for you. Let's say I tap you to make a game wherein we give Mario the Kratos treatment. Take a well-known character and give him deep characterization, and maybe even one that goes against the characterization of previous incarnations. What kind of story would you tell with that? Now, the topic this is related to is, as a creative writing challenge, how do you make a character who has no character have character? In other words, if we were to go back and do a proper remake of Final Fantasy I, we would have to basically invent characterization for most of the characters in that game. And that's a separate topic, but for Mario, it kind of still applies, because Mario really doesn't have a lot of characterization, if we're being honest. Mario is the Mario. That's what he is. That's what he does. He is the Mario. And that's it. He is a one-note character. Even in the extra stuff, like the RPGs or the comics, Mario still has a one-note character. He is the hero. That's probably on purpose by Nintendo's part. We're not actually sure about that. A lot of people speculate on that. So what would I do with Mario? Well, I wanted to ask you guys first. So Takoida says, every slice of life, boring, unhappy, everyday grinding life. I'm with it. Star Wars fails, F-. You have to do something with it, though. That's the whole point of the creative challenge. Well, that's the whole point of sharing these on Stream Hazards, is to get your guys' answers as well. There's no point if you don't start posting. Good morning, Salty Panda Bear. What I would probably do is I would portray Mario as a cynical idealist. I would portray him as someone who is being dragged forward through garbage by his own idealism that he resents. I would portray him as someone who wants desperately for life to be better and works constantly at trying to make it better, and fails repeatedly and sees life as arguably worse than it actually is because of how many things go wrong and because of how many problems happen and because of how many issues are constantly carrying him forward. And just it's important that he refuses to give up, but it's also important that he doesn't really have what you would call hope. It's not like he's like, tomorrow it will be a better day. It's more like, well, let's try this again. Exactly, Star Wars. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of the creative challenge. So Mega says, make him a reluctant hero that he doesn't want to do, but he feels he has to. Hot Wing says maybe something to do with Donkey Kong. Terra says, make him not want anything to do with Luigi. Hazardous says he's unknowingly killing civilians, conscripts, and people who are forced to attack the Mushroom Kingdom. Okay. Harian says concerns of a small businessman worrying about economics and growing to the... I like that. I like that one, actually. That's a good one. Have him basically be shifting more and more towards the Mushroom Kingdom, despite all its issues, because he hates being back home. Jaludo says an alcoholic working-class slob who's forced to look after his brain-damaged brother. Bring back the edge. Bring back the edge. Too much. Trickster says Mario falls off the hero's path after Peach's rejection and asks himself what's the point. Okay, I can see that. I don't know what a knight in sour armor is, but Tigzar's comment is probably close to what I'm thinking of. Jaludo says that he really hates life and everything around him, and all his adventures are just in Luigi's imagination. Okay, too much, too much! He takes mushrooms. Too much characterization, Kay. He catches Luigi with his wife. He's not married. Peach is off doing her own thing with Bowsette. At least that's what the internet tells me. A spiral into madness after dropping Bowser into lava. Jesus, I thought I was dark. You guys are impressive here. Someone with a mental illness picturing being the hero in his head when in reality he's committing horrible acts. Like I said, I thought I was dark. Jesus Christ. Mario gets tired of saving the kingdom and instead comes up with Bowser to conquer it. I like that. See, admittedly, this is just the way my mind was thinking, but I was trying to stay true to the elemental core of Mario's character, the hero, and just tried to portray the hero in a slightly different light than, you know, the hero. Basically adding layers to an existing character. Now, you don't have to do that, obviously. That's not what the question was. That's just the way I was going with that. Oh, you laugh, Rax. So, I don't know if you know this, Rax, but Pax likes to link me random images that are horrifying or funny or whatever. Also, we have a memes channel. Mario goes on a homicidal rampage after discovering Luigi is also really the person who beheaded Toad for stealing all the mushrooms. What? Oh my god. Mario turns evil and becomes Superman. I'm with it. How did you manage that, Tyrobot? He turns into paper and everyone else does too. I love it! Ah, gotcha, Adam. Hadn't heard of that one. I don't really browse TV tropes because it's a bottomless pit of hell. I mean, I don't mean that TV tropes is bad. I mean, it just sucks you in. I guess it's just a whirlpool. Whatever. I know, right, Blue F Alex? These guys are just dark. Oh my god, we're playing some Diablo 1 stuff here. Maybe this is too close to the Diablo lore run to ask this. So, Darren says a cynical character. He notices his entire... is just a repeat of itself and more or less ends up in an existential crisis where he keeps doing what he usually does just for the sake that he doesn't know to do anything else. SJ says he realizes he's a plumber and gets back to fixing toilets. Didn't we have that? Tigzar says Mario's an eternal child that can't cope with bearing any responsibility, so he clings to his childhood model of a hero who saves a princess but refuses to settle down. Okay, I'm with it. I'm not doing a direct parallel to God of War 4 to quite a hell no. Okay, I like DeGaulle. The story of Mario is actually a work of fiction written by Sonic the Hedgehog, someone who could only understand the world as a side-scroller. I know, Rax, this is super dark. Oh my god. I do remember the Saturday morning Mario cartoons, plural. There were 3. I'm serious. They were all crap. I actually need to talk about that someday. Peach is using Mario for her own purposes, and Mario knows it. Hazardous says, what if we explore Mario the hero without any situation to make him heroic? So he becomes the everyday monotonous routine and gets forgotten as being the good guy. Interesting. I actually really enjoy now what stories. I've talked about that several times before. Fiction doesn't actually do now what stories all that often. You did it! You accomplished the big fight and you defeated the big bad. Now what? And I find the now what concept to be absolutely fascinating. So the idea of a now what, after, say, Mario 3 or Mario World, for example, is actually interesting. I'd have to think about that. I'm so sorry, Blue Wolf Alex. I have more complicated thoughts than I don't want to get off topic talking about those cartoons right now. Let's just say that I have a complicated history with those cartoons and leave it at that. Mario recognizes the eternal stalemate between the Mushroom Kingdom and Bowser's Kingdom and decides to raise his own third faction. I like it. I like it. I hate it when books don't do follow-up. I know, right, Iffinboot? The answer is simple. He's a mushroom addict! I'm gonna go defeat the Bowser. Kay says... Okay, here it is. Before I read this, Kay is like the super darkest, edgiest person in the world. So let's see what he wrote. He is exactly what it looks like, a plumber who goes off eating mushrooms for a performance boost while fighting evil with an upbeat attitude. The twist is, everything else looks at him like he's crazy for doing it. I knew it! That's not that edgy, actually. And Mario did a MOBA. The problem is, this is actually, in my opinion, this is not a simple question. Usually I take the more complex questions and bring them to the stream because we can actually discuss these. I can't answer that in a paragraph on Tumblr, right? In my opinion, the reason this is tied into the other topic I mentioned is because Mario really does not have any characterization other than hero. That's it. He helps people, the end. There's not a lot you can do with that, really. There's basically 3 directions, roughly, you can go with that. You could take that and say hi to a shock. Hi. You could take that and throw it out the window and just invent new characterization for him, which several of you have done. You can go ahead and say, all right, let's try to portray it in a different light, so he's still heroic, but, you know, we know more, which adds more depth to the situation. Or you can try to add layers to his heroism. So he is still the hero, it's just also such and such, such and such, such and such. And that's really the 3 general categorization of options that you can do with that. Because that's how it works when you're limited like that. Hang on, I actually have a different playlist, just occurred to me. There we go, perfect. What if he encounters a situation that he tries to help and makes worse? I think that could work. I think it would be easy to overdo that kind of a thing, but I think that could definitely work. And this could tie back into what Takoida was saying, if we were going to go the rage route. For example, what if Mario goes and beats Bowser, whatever, and Bowser basically pulls a King DDD on us, just to simplify really quick. And so Mario's like, oh, and Toad dies. I had to think about that for a second. Can't be Peach, there's too much we can do with that. Can't be Luigi. I'm not killing Luigi off. But Toad, the original Toad, he's innocent, he's upbeat, he's lighthearted, he's happy, he's dead. And I feel like that could really add a degree of... No, I take it back, He's not dead, He's worse. He's permanently crippled. And Toad is basically just loses his use of his legs or something along those lines. And to make it worse, Toad is still upbeat and idealistic. He's going around in a wheelchair, and he is just as exuberant and just as supportive of Mario as he's ever been. Just, yeah, don't worry, Mario. I know you've got this. It's going to work out. And that just starts cracking Mario. The fact that Toad still believes in him even though he failed. Thus, we could have, something about that incident just is the trigger for Mario's rage, or whatever you want to call it. And I think I know exactly how I'd portray it. Basically the same as the star power, the invincibility. Just, I feel like if we were to take, you know, a guy walking on going, and bring it into the modern era with a fully 3D game, I think we could actually do a lot with the gameplay mechanics of invincibility. I really think there's so many... I think we could actually make it so that you could stretch that out, like make a literal talent tree. Do you want your invincibility to just make it so that you hit things really hard? Do you want to make it so that everything else gets super slowed down? Do you want to make it so that you have the ability to like split off multiple copies of you? You know, just basically turn the invincibility power into his... This is my no really button. Make it his limit break, basically. Make it his limit break. Yeah, Shadow Priest insanity, exactly. Just... Victory music, very important. But see, and this is why, even though I always write dark things, there's always at least a little bit of light in my stories. Things have to get better. They have to. Otherwise, what's the point? I would make Toad and his endless enthusiasm, which is crushing Mario at first, eventually be the thing that helps him to keep going. Knowing that even after all the garbage that Toad have to go through, the fact that Toad will never walk again, he's still enthusiastic, he's still optimistic, being the kind of thing that helps Mario to realize that, yes, you fail! But just because you failed does not mean you stop trying. And then I would have things get better. Thank you very, very much, Spinobi. As ever, much appreciate those Twitch Prime subs. Would you like to put that towards anything in particular? Also, fear. I've been thinking about changing that. I know that we've been doing that for a long time, but I was thinking about it. The fear thing is basically a meme that we haven't... That we do because it's a meme. I've been trying to think about changing the fear thing into something a little more meaningful. What do you guys think about that? Oh, that's horrible, Contextual. Contextual says, make it so that every one-up kills someone else in the Mushroom Kingdom and then have Mario be crushed by the realization. In my experience, life actually does get better if you know it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. It is a meme for meme's sake. That's exactly correct. I'm one of those weird people who, as much as I enjoy traditions that have purpose. That's the way my mind thinks. The only holidays I celebrate in the year, really, are Thanksgiving, Christmas, and birthdays, because there's a purpose behind those. Fingers crossed, if and but. Fingers crossed. So... what can we change it into, basically, right? Like, just food for thought. Be thinking about that. You got it, Spinobi. Spinobi. Fire Emblem 3. Oh. So anyways, I guess we can move on to the next question now. We talked about that one a bit. So, what's the one after Mario? So I thought I'd ask this one because you guys are more familiar with Warhammer 40k than I am. Oh god, where's my timestamp? Yeah, we talked for almost 20 minutes about that one. I knew it, Who Girl. How dare you be weird? How if we play as a Goomba who's conscripted into Bowser's army and our goal is just to survive Mario's rampage? I mean, that sounds like an awesome game to me, but then again, I really wish we had more genres of a lot of different franchises, so what the hell do I know? I mean, if there was a purpose to it, DeGaulle, Halloween... the only purpose Halloween has for me is the tradition of the political thing, which has a purpose, which is why we maintain that tradition. Make sense? Anyways, next question. Well, I agree with that, Lilith Alex. That's why we'd have to come up with something that has purpose. That's something that actually is significant for it. Other than, of course, what would you like to put that towards? Because that's kind of become the new thing without really meaning to. Anyways, So, a Mechwarrior style game set in Warhammer 40k, where you play as or start in a Stompa, and work your way up to a Mega Gargant. You can customize your weapon, armor, skins, and crew, your gunner, repair chief, and other things. And if the enemy boards you, it switches to XCOM style gameplay with you and the Orc Commander some boys. What do you think about this idea, and what would you add to it? Well, I mean, I always say thank you, but only if I mean it. That's an old rule of mine. Mom taught me that. You only say thank you if you mean it. Otherwise, what's the point? There has to be a point. I could summarize most of my life philosophy by that sentence. There has to be a point. Anyways. What do you think, guys? I was actually thinking there needs to be a mechanic where the more blood you get on it, the faster it goes. Oh, it'd have to have more than one Orc faction. In fact, honestly, I think this would be most interesting if it was mostly Orcs fighting other Orcs. Like, sure, we can have... Let me put it to you this way. So, say we have... The majority of the campaign is just set on a single world or system with a bunch of competing Orc clans, okay? And we're not really building up to a WOG yet. We're not there. But every now and again, you would have to fight basically an elite fight, a boss fight. Except the boss wouldn't be another Orc. It would be a group of Eldar, or it would be a group of, Ultramarines or something. In other words, just showcase that as boss-style gameplay and make it so that's awesome. I mean, I'm cool with combining layers. I'm actually one of those people who really likes multi-genre games, but I do understand the complexities and difficulties as far as budget and time when it comes to making those. What do I think of RDR2 so far? It's okay. It's about average. Story's good. Gameplay's not great. I think what I would add, other than what I just mentioned about the boss fight things and making it all about 40k, the Orcs, I really like the idea of basically making it so that effectively one of your pilots, either you or one of your crew members, can slowly gain more and more WOG, for lack of a better way to put it, which can either be something that you want to do, because you want to start your own WOG, or something you want to stop because it's one of your side characters that you don't want to be the leader of your new WOG. Something like that. I think that'd be a nice little side mechanic. I'd have to think about that, though. I don't actually agree with you, Dakota. I think Mechwarrior is perfectly compatible with that, because at that point, your crew, you would still be playing the mech, basically, but... Imagine if you're actually wandering around in an Atlas, but for whatever reason, just break physics for a second, you have crew inside your Atlas, and this crew helps increase your heat efficiency, and this crew helps with this ability, and they give you cooldowns which you can use, that kind of a thing. I think it would slot very easily into the Mechwarrior genre, into the Mechwarrior 5 genre. When does that game come out? When the heck is Mechwarrior 5 finally coming out? We still haven't had that. Anyways, I actually don't have much else to add to this one. I do like the idea. Resident Evil 4 for Switch, which is awesome. We need every game on the Switch, most games on the Switch. How do you switch between Mechwarrior and XCOM? You get boarded. Like, basically, the idea would be that would be special missions, as you're... Oi, what's that noise out there? There's some boys trying to get on board our mecha! Oh, we'll give them a right crumb pasting. And then you load, and then you're inside the mech fighting, XCOM style. Ta-da! There we go. But yeah, I would basically have that be, rather than a random event that could happen, I would make those static missions, because that would enable us to do more with the specifics of who you're fighting and why you're fighting and all that fun stuff. That's just off the top of my head. I'm not sure. The Switch Pro. I mean, that's probably what we're getting next year. Let's just be honest about it. Co-op would be interesting. We actually already have games like that. Like Wings of Icarus, for example. So here's a question. This is just a fun one. What if Kratos, era God of War 4, found himself in the land of Middle-earth? What do you think he would do? Would he just stick to his hermit style, or would he get involved? Do you think Gandalf, if he knew of this newcomer, would seek his aid? Could Gandalf gain his favor? How would things go if Gandalf managed to persuade Kratos to join him? Well, I mean, arguably, are there gods in Lord of the Rings? Really? And don't tell me the Maiar are gods. He would be like, hey, and all the people are like, Mr. Kratos, what shall we do next? Boy! I'm done. I'm done. Yeah, I agree with Takoida. I do not think Gandalf would successfully convince Kratos of anything. As Takoida says, Gandalf has no lever on him. Gandalf has nothing to help convince him. Like, the most he could say is a lot of people are going to die, and Kratos, especially circa God of War 4 era, just doesn't care that much about a lot of people. Now, if this is God of War 3 era, or 2, or 1, all Gandalf would have to say is, I will give you exactly what you want if you go do this, and Kratos will be stupid enough to go do it. Now, what Adam says is interesting, because I stand by my statement firmly. I do not think Gandalf would successfully convince Kratos to anything. But I think Sauron might successfully convince Kratos to fight him, because you know Sauron would actually would go out of his way to either recruit Kratos, which would end up with him pestering Kratos, which would end up with him straight out harassing Kratos, and it would just go on and on until finally Kratos is like, alright, fine, I'm going to kill all of you. And Kratos would just go, and that would be the end of the orcs. That's my thinking. I mean, what's funniest is Kratos would be like, even if Sauron the Deceiver managed to successfully deceive Kratos, as of God of War 4 era, I find that unlikely. Even if he succeeded at that, we know where that would go. Kratos would finally learn the truth and would just go and kill Sauron. And then someone would be like, no, he's still in the ring, and Kratos is like, give me the ring. Fling! And he just tosses it as hard as he can into Mount Doom, and that would be the end of it. It would not work out well for him, is what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm thinking. The problem is Kratos is so stupidly overpowered for setting his low tiers is Middle-earth, that as soon as he gets involved in general, it's over. I'm assuming 3rd era, honestly. And Gollum's like, precious! And he just grabs Gollum, flings him in. No, you should spare Gollum! Why? What purpose does this creature serve? Why would Kratos keep the ring? Yeah, and Gollum would be like, Gollum would irritate Kratos, and Kratos would snap his neck without trying. Remember, this is a guy who was ridiculously, ludicrously strong because of the whole superhuman thing. So he would be like, damn it, come here. Oh. Anyways. Because he's not a hobbit. Pshaw, I say. Yeah, exactly, Who Girl. No. This is not how it should be. And then he'd fall in love with an elf. And they'd live happily ever after. So, next question. Speaking of Lord of the Rings, what if in Lord of the Rings it was Aragorn? Aragorn? Viggo Mortensen, who had succumbed to the call of the One Ring and tried to take it from Frodo. Is it Aragorn or Aragon? I can never remember. While Boromir stayed strong in its temptation, what if Aragorn... Okay, it's Aragorn. What if Aragorn had perished in the battle while Boromir had lived? What if Boromir had learned from this time and changed for the better? Basically, swap Boromir with Aragorn. I'm actually trying to picture them saying it. Aragorn. Yeah, I can hear it now. Okay, it's Aragorn. God, that's such a weird name. So Aragorn falls, and Boromir's like, no! And Sean Bean lives through all 3 movies. Okay, all joking aside, that would be interesting. Because, obviously we are assuming that Boromir remains uncorruptible for the sake of this argument. That has to be something we add in there. But, as Leander says, see, Boromir just would not have the same positioning and clout in order to accomplish what Aragorn would. I can't picture Boromir successfully convincing the dead to work for him. I can't picture Boromir ascending to the crown of all of mankind. I can't picture Boromir being the one who successfully convinces the elves to join, etc., etc. So, it would probably be relatively the same up until we get to Pelennor Fields, and then everything would go much, much worse. Minas Tirith would probably fall, just straight up fall. It was close to falling anyways. And that would also take with it the bulk of both Gondor and Rohan's armies. So that would be the end of resistance in the West. The end? Boromir... I think of Boromir as a natural commander. I think he is actually much better of a commander than Aragorn. This is just my take on the character, obviously. That he is someone who is more tactically adept, that he is someone who is probably better in a fight, and he is someone who knows how to rally people and get them to go in a direction. In a battle, Aragorn is far more, to use the old archaic term, kingly. Aragorn is someone who is far much more of a leader of men, someone who can rally together disparate forces onto his side, someone who can connect and coordinate with far greater range than Boromir could. I actually like Boromir quite a bit as well, consequently, if it's not obvious. Not just because of Sean Bean. So, my take on that. I'm sorry, Mike Romano. I blame Daylight Savings Time. Aragorn's also a ranger, that's true. Boromir is a soldier. A very good soldier. In fact, I would actually argue that Boromir is probably one of the best soldiers we had in the setting, not counting super mystical elves and possibly dwarves. My opinion. That's also true, Tigzar. I'm not sure what Boromir would do about Helm's Deep. No, yeah, that's a great comparison. Boromir is the low gain to Aragorn's Marek, I agree. Anyways, so I think it would turn out well until things got really bad, and then because they'd have no real backup plans or anything, then the world ends. Sauron wins. Moving on. Oh, thank you, Kay. See you around, Questy. This is from Paper Mario 2. I'll give you a hint. It plays during a dragon fight. What's our timestamp? So, next question. So this one, actually, I find it very interesting. This is one I looked at and I was like, I have to ask this one on stream. You are the new game director of Valve, and you have been given a free blank check to make one of the following games, but you can only choose one. You can make Half-Life 3, Portal 3, Left 4 Dead 3, or Team Fortress 3. Again, blank check on time and money. Which one do you make? And, as ever, why? I've been debating this one for a while. In my head. Because all of those have an interesting purpose to them. Yeah, why? You have to give a why. A lot of people were saying Portal 3. Several other people saying Half-Life 3. I haven't seen anyone say Left 4 Dead 3 or Team Fortress 3. If I could just jump in really quick here, of these four, Team Fortress 3 would be my least option by far. Because Team Fortress 2 is still a perfectly serviceable game, and we have too many co-op, shooter FPS games right now as is. Going up against Overwatch or Fortnite right now is not a smart move, creatively or business-wise, so that's off the list. Left 4 Dead 3 has a little bit more potential because it really is a different style of game, but I feel like the only reason Left 4 Dead 3 could actually work is if we really started to stretch with basically gimmicks, map mechanics, mutators, variety of actual actions you can take rather than just fill up the car, hold the line, kill your way through. We need more variety to that. But I'm not sure that really is something that should be considered when Half-Life 3 and Portal 3 on the line. So it's really between Half-Life 3 and Portal 3 for me as well. Alright, so Contextual would do none of the above. Contextual quits. So, as I said, I've been thinking about this question I'm reading all your guys' thoughts. I'm not saying them out loud because they're too quick. I can't speak that quickly. In my mind, if I was going from a business perspective, I would make Portal 3. From a purely economic perspective, Portal 3 is safer. It is a far safer move to make. Far more people will like it, and it is far easier for people to not be upset about it. There will always be people upset about it, but I would go with Portal 3 if I was concerned about the economics and my job. Creatively, I would pick Half-Life 3. Can anyone guess why before I explain? That was my reason as well for Portal 3, Anthony. There's a lot you could do. Portal 2, I think, did a good job by not being Portal 1. I know that's a strange opinion to have, but I mean it sincerely. Portal 2 showed that you can branch out that style of gameplay while still being a first-person puzzler. Because Half-Life 3? No. Because I want to conclude the story? No. To expand on the G-Man? No. Because I hate loose ends? No. It needs a conclusion? No. There you go, Rax. I knew one of you who knew me would get this. Because there's plenty you can do with the story beyond Laidlaw's outline. Because there's so much you can work with, and Anthony got there too. You can basically start from scratch. Half-Life 3, let's be honest with ourselves. Ignoring the memes, ignoring the public opinion, if we divorce ourselves from the need to make this game economically successful, which we could, because it's Valve, they don't need the money from a Half-Life 3 sale. So you could do whatever you want with Half-Life 3, creatively. So you could sit there and say, I'm going to do the best I can to make the best game I can, and completely ignore all the hype and all the machine and all the marketing and all the garbage, and just do what you want to do with Half-Life 3. It is almost a blank slate. Almost. Now, obviously, concluding the story is a thought that would occur to me, but we don't have to. To be perfectly blunt, the Half-Life 3 story was already concluded by Laidlaw's outline. Right? So that impetus is no longer there. And as Bregwood points out, it could be a reboot. Just be like, all right, let's start over. Let's try to polish this a little bit and make something new. Right? Now, what I would do specifically, I'd have to think about that. That's the kind of question I would want to put time into, rather than just whatever knee-jerk reaction I have. And see, several people have already pointed this out. Half-Life to Half-Life 2 was already basically a blank slate. That's kind of the point. Half-Life 2, if you never played Half-Life, your enjoyment of it doesn't really go down any. And the nature of the world and the setting and the mechanics and the story was so fundamentally changed between 1 and 2 that they kind of already did the Etch-a-Sketch thing from 1 to 2. So why not do it with 2 to 3, right? Just my thinking. Oh yeah, I'd also have you play as someone other than Gordon Freeman, at least for parts of it. Would I make Half-Life 3 or Half-Life 2 Episode 3? I'd do Half-Life 3. I would go ahead and put the 3 in the title. Because the alternative would be call it Half-Life. And I hate it when game studios do that. Exactly, Takoida. That's one of my first knee-jerk thoughts. We hear about the idea of extraplanar powers and space abilities and organizations which are active out in the greater galaxy. We get tidbits of the whole idea of being a mercenary, of whoever the hell the G-Man is working for. Go in that direction. Or at least have story in that direction. Oh, ha-ha, Rax. Yeah, there's a reason I call it Doom 4, Progue. There's also a reason I call it God of War 4. Because it is. But yeah, exactly. I want to use the setting. I do think the Half-Life setting is fascinating. I really do. I think there's a lot of potential there. That most of it is by design. I call this the peeking through the window, or peeking through the crack, right? I need to come up with a codified lorium for this. But it's when you look through a crack, and there's a whole world out there. You're only seeing this little sliver of it, but you can tell effort was put into designing that world that you're just getting a snippet of. Half-Life does that all the time. When we finally do the Half-Life lore run, I'll be talking about that constantly, about how they approach that aspect of storytelling. That's true, Valvedrix. We still have the, did they ever name him? I can't think of his name. The guy from Opposing Force. Yeah, kind of like Fallout New Vegas. That's another excellent example of that. Either way, that would be my take on that. Adrian Shepard. Right. I need to do some research before I'm ready for the Half-Life lore run, which will probably happen beginning of next year, by the way. Along with Neverwinter Nights. Those are the 2 big ones I'm looking at next. Neverwinter Nights and Half-Life. And then I'll start working on the other ones. So... yeah, I'm sorry, I just think there's so much they could do with that. And again, Valve doesn't necessarily care about it being a financial success. And I know that sounds like a strange thing to mention, but I say that because that means you can focus purely on the creative side. And that could be good, and that could be bad. But at least whatever we would end up making with Half-Life 3 would be making because we were trying to make the best possible game. Anyways, I still got a couple other questions here. Lots of questions this week. I feel like people are giving more of these now that I'm reading these on stream. So what are we at here? Good or bad to go? Okay, so, so there's this spectacular space battle between the Sith and the Jedi. And there's debris that falls to the earth, and somehow a single lightsaber falls down. Now, that's very true to go. A single lightsaber falls down to the planet below, which is basically in the Bronze Age. What do you think would happen? I mean, we could just use this in real life. What if a lightsaber was just Q-snapped into existence in the Bronze Age? Do you think a religion would start? Do you think kings would be made? Or would everyone have an existential crisis? Or how do you think people would react to this lightsaber? Which region? Oh, I don't know. Assyria. How powerful do I think the Combine are? Actually, I think the Combine aren't that strong, but that's just my take on it. I think the Combine are one of those organizations that get by on bullying the people weaker than them, because the people stronger than them would crush them like a bug. And assume someone finds it, Takoya. Assume someone's like, oh my god. This sounds like an interesting story, because I imagine the first person who found it would be like, oh my god, and kill themselves, accidentally. And then I imagine the second person would find it and be like, oh my god, and kill themselves accidentally. And then, like, finally a group of people find it, and one of those people kill themselves accidentally. And then the others are like, okay, we can be careful of this. And then we finally figure out how the blade side works. Let's assume the battery lasts for at least a couple centuries, bare minimum. Just for the sake of argument. See you around, tricksters. Hope to see you Halloween. Ooh. Yeah, see, I'm with Harriet. I think that insert religion here, like Zoroastrianism or whatever, would be filled with fear. Still looking for suggestions on that. Thank you very, very much, Roberto. As ever, I do much appreciate those Twitch Prime subs. Would you like to put that towards anything? This is just Mario music. That last one was the ending song from Paper Mario 2. So I think the religion would be like, this is a symbol of our religion. And then they would use it as a divine sign of their religion. That's just my take on that. This is the sign that we are the right religion. No, you're right, Malachor. A properly utilized lightsaber would basically be the end of sieges. Thank you again, then, Roberto. Now, I like the Count's take on it, because we're all kind of assuming that the lightsaber would keep being used, but what if someone just decided to bury it with them in their tomb, and enough people were loyal or afraid enough to go ahead and bury it in the tomb, and then that's the end of it! The lightsaber just bows out of history. That would be so tragic, wouldn't it? I've actually heard the theory that there are like artifacts like that in real life that aliens have visited us and given to us that we just buried with some pharaoh back in the aughts. The aughts. We'll assume it doesn't need the recharge, Darren. Well, that's true, Tigzar. But at the same time, there are still tomes we still haven't been able to find. Or that may exist that we never even know about. Or what? Actually, that's even worse. What if they sent it out to sea? That would be so much worse. Put it on a boat with them and go, and that's the end of that. Oh, there you go. Millennia later, Indiana Jones is like, this belongs in a museum. And Hitler's like, that will be the new weapon of the great Jedi Order. I mean, sorry. I didn't just mean to call the Jedi fascists. That would be hysterical contextual. Yeah, there's a reason I said Zoroastrianism, because Assyria. That wasn't an accident. The Jedi are Nazis. From my perspective, the Jedi are Nazis. Well, then you are lost. All right. Anyways. So moving on. What do we got here? Oh, I already answered this question. Hang on. I already answered this question. I thought I had one more question to share. Kratos one, there's the Warhammer one. Mario one, the FF one. It's the WoW one I still need to answer privately. So, okay. Here it is. I found it. Last question for the day, before we get back to RDR2. Oh god, Inquisitor, that'd be terrifying. Let's assume the Force doesn't exist for some reason, Tigzar. I mean, it's not like you need the Force to use a lightsaber, unless you're watching the Clone Wars, but I'll talk about that in the future. What games do I want for the Switch? All of them. Although my biggest picks right now are City Skylines, which happened, Stardew Valley, which happened, and EU4 and Stellaris, which are possible. Oh, there's also Civ 5, which will never happen. But we got Civ 6. That's a consolation prize. I was wondering, this is the question now. I was wondering on the merits of fully sentient and sapient spellbooks. Say something unique happens during their creation and they are now alive. How interesting would that be? How would the personality develop? How would it teach? How would you socialize with it? And most importantly, what would that life form's existence be like? How useful would they be? Love the show. Actually, it works pretty well, Bragwin. Legitimately. I'm enjoying City Skylines on the Switch. I would be enjoying it more. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys about Octopath. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Also, woo, T-woo, Tubibi. Yeah, like, exactly, Necro. Something along those lines, except less horrible and evil. I don't know, Anthony. You're probably waiting, like several people are, to see if a Switch 2 comes out next year. And there's a lot of evidence that there is going to be a Switch 2 next year, so I don't blame you for waiting. I gotta be honest, if a Switch 2 comes out and it's sufficiently an upgrade, I'll probably buy it. That's actually a good point, Snowdot. I didn't even think about that. That does sound like Discworld. Well, see, Hazardous, that was actually my thought too, funnily enough. No, wait, actually, I think I did stream Dungeons 3. So my first thought with regards to the spellbooks was that the spellbook is limited by what's ever written in it. Like, that's its only form of communication. It can't hear, it can't see. The only connecting point between the spellbook and the rest of the world is either the magic being pulled out of it or whatever's being written into it. I find that idea more fascinating because otherwise it's just a sentient being that happens to be in the form of a book. I prefer the idea of it being a unique life form in this method of communication. It would also mean it would be... I feel like people would be able to read people, like say a book gets sufficiently good at understanding handwriting so it could know the voice of the person writing in it. Or, for example, the book could have the ability to tell if someone was hesitant or some kind of, like, bleed off of their emotions as they're writing to give additional information along with just the written communication. Someone asked about Odyssey, and I missed it. I must have missed it. It's scrolled off the screen. Ah, there it is, Mega. There it is, yes. Yes, AC Odyssey was a net negative, an overall net negative. Exactly, Leander. That's a great idea. Like, the idea of it basically growing more pages. It's on the website, Blue Walrus. It growing more pages as it gets older, you know? Or maybe as it gets more powerful. As it being a literally magical being, you need to literally pump more magic into it in order to grow it, increase its capacity for spells and knowledge and whatnot. And, of course, literal physical pages. Something like that, I don't know. Oh, come on. Sorry. I've got the scoreboard of the Crystal Palace Arsenal game right here. No spoilers, don't worry. I know that feeling, contextual. Believe it or not. What didn't I like about AC Odyssey? Everything? It's on the website. If you go look at the list of pluses and minuses, the spoilery pluses and minuses are all there. If you want a non-spoiler version, the gameplay was crap and the story was crap. I didn't know the Grudges book got bigger. That's hysterical. Oh, that's true, Hazardous. I didn't even think about that. I know, SJ. It's weird, right? I like... What if we do both, Hazardous? So that you can have, like, pages which just absorb the ink, and that's just for communication. But then there's pages that are dedicated towards basically holding the magic of spells. Like, in actual D&D Faerunian lore, if you have a spell book and you want to write down such and such a spell, it will actually take up an entire page. Not because there's that much text in the spell, but because the power of the spell takes up one page of a magical artifact that is the spell book. So you could just have, like, you know, some of the pages are the spell pages and some of the pages are the communication pages. I used to be Pave Maniac. Over the last couple of months, I have slowly stopped being one, to the point where I'm really seriously thinking about switching which club I actually follow. because not because they're losing. I don't care if they're losing, but because they're boring now, in my opinion. It's gotten to the point where I'm not interested in their matches anymore. It's frustrating. Exactly, Mega. That is actually true in actual D&D lore. I forget the numbers, but like I know there's at least one spell that takes up 16 pages, for example. I have no idea, Blue Walrus. What do I want more for the Switch? Kingdom Hearts or Nier Automata? Kingdom Hearts! They're even doing that, what's it called? Rax, help me out. There's the version that is like all Kingdom Hearts to date. It's for like 40 bucks or whatever. And that's coming out on everything else except for the PC and the Switch. Make that come out on the Switch, I'm just saying. I'd buy the hell out of that. PAX would buy the Kingdom Hearts bundle if it came out on the Switch. And if you don't understand why I say that, it's because he's not really a fan of the Kingdom Hearts series. In fact, he to this day still hasn't played through all of it. Come on! No, not 1.5 and 2.5. There's something else. Hang on. I can look this up. What's it called? The All-in-One. Kingdom Hearts All-in-One. That's what it's called. Kingdom Hearts All-in-One, which contains 1.5, 2.5, 2.8, and that's it. Wait, that can't be it. Oh, this also contains Kingdom Hearts 3. Well, either way, make it on the Switch. Is it the story thus far? Ah, whatever. Which one is that, Nymph? Is that 1, 2, or 3? Because I've only played 2 of that bundle. What the hell, Braveman? Ooh, a randomizer for Kingdom Hearts. That sounds like fun. Anyways, I think we're done with that. I have no idea, Anthony. I honestly didn't put any thought into it. I thought I was the only person who didn't like Odyssey. I thought everyone else loved it, so that's the first I've heard about the community being divided. Oh. Opinions are opinions. Which was the question, Snurnutton? Because I feel like I did, but I don't remember what the question was. Either way, I'm going to chop off the local recording.